Hey everyone, welcome back to Miniature Painting 101, a series of videos where I teach you all about painting miniatures from start to finish, clothes to skin, and everything in between. And this is part 34, cloth, specifically cloth robes in brown shading. So today we are going to be painting this Siege Brisbane's front and back cloths using two different approaches with the same color scheme. So today we will be using in one approach, both of them will have the same base and highlight colors, but one of them will involve Agrax Earthshade. So the base will be Zandri Dust, Agrax Earthshade, then back to Zandri Dust for the first technique, Ushabti Bone, and Screaming Skull will be our other highlight colors for both techniques. So the two keys when painting clothes or cloth is number one, you gotta have thin paints. And the second is to start at the pinnacle of each part of the cloth and work your way towards the recesses, and I'll be showing you both those today. So we'll start off with Zandri Dust, our base color, which is a really great light brown from the Citadel range. And of course I will be thinning it down with some thinner, because that way it gets a nice thin consistency, and it's better to do two thin coats over the miniature surface than one thick coat. You don't want to show any brush strokes, and you really want a nice blend with your colors. So I'm going to take the Zandri Dust and apply it very nice and evenly to both sides of the miniature. Of course, we're going to start with the back one. For the back one, we're going to do my standard approach, and for the front cloth, we're going to do a shortened approach in case you don't have enough time or if you don't want too extreme of the recesses. So for the back one, we'll start off with Zandri Dust and make sure to get a nice even coat. If after a single coat, let it dry, and if you find any parts just need a second coat, feel free to apply a second coat. Make sure it's nice and even. So now that it's covered in paint, we're going to be applying our Agrax Earthshade. I did water it down, a 1-to-1 mix of water and Agrax Earthshade, and I applied it to the recesses. If you want more of a lighter recess, I recommend using a sepia shade, such as Seraphim Sepia. It's not as dark and deep as these recesses. And when it dried, I started off with the first highlight, which I went back to Zandri Dust, the base color. And what I did was I started by completely tracing out the raised parts of each part of the cloak. So, as you can see here, I'm just very carefully drawing out all the raised areas of the cloth. And then I just start at the very top and work my way very slowly and surely with steady brush strokes towards the recesses. And the goal is to stop just shy of the farthest point of the recesses for this first part. That way the shade is in the very crevices, but you are slowly blending the Zandri Dust back towards the recesses. So as you see, I just start at the very top and slowly work my way downwards for each part of the cloth. And that way you guarantee that the top parts are always the lightest, and you are slowly blending darker as it goes darker down. And that's essentially the technique. So now we're going to take Ushabti Bone, the first highlight color. It is a layer color from the Citadel range. And we're going to do the same thing that we did with the Zandri Dust, but this time we're not going to go as far down. So once again, we'll start off by figuring out where the raised areas are. So I'll be tracing them out with the Ushabti Bone. And luckily, as I said, I recommend using thin down paint. So I thin down the Ushabti Bone as well, with thinner as well. I thin down all my paints in the same way that I thin down the Zandri Dust. So now that we figured out where our raised areas are, we're going to start, once again, starting at the top of them and working our way towards the recesses. But this time, once again, we're not going to go as far down as we did with the Zandri Dust, because we want some of the Zandri Dust still to be there in the recesses. And when that was done, I repeated this process with Screaming Skull. So first, start at the raised areas, trace them out. And then once again, go a little bit further down, but not as far down as the previous step, the Ushabti Bone. And that's it. And using thin down paints, you get a really nice gradient from the recesses, which are the dark Ushabti Bone, all the way up to the light Screaming Skull. But now, if you don't have a lot of time on your hands, or you don't want that defined of recesses, here is a simpler approach to the same effect. So once again, I painted the front cloth with Xandri Dust, thinned down. And for this step, we are going to be skipping the Agrax Earthshade and going straight to the Ushabti Bone. So once again, I figured out by isolating and tracing over where the raised areas are on the cloth, the highest points. And after they were all traced out, I began to paint towards the recesses. Once again, just one little brush stroke at a time. Remember, steady hands, steady strokes, and just paint towards the recesses. And this time, because you're not using a shade, I recommend exaggerating a little bit by leaving a little bit larger of a gap than you did with the previous painting steps. So this time I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap between the Ushabti Bone and the Xandri Dust because I want to make it a little bit more exaggerated. If you want it less defined, don't leave as big of a gap. Essentially, it's up to you if you want to do how big of the gaps you want to recommend. The larger the gap, the more exaggerated the recesses will look. And then I just repeated this process with Screaming Skull. So essentially, I was able to skip from a 5-step process down to a 3-step process, and you do achieve a very similar look. It's just not as defined of recesses because you didn't use a shade, so it's not as dark. And then with Screaming Skull, once again, I started off by defining the tips and then working my way towards recesses, and obviously not going as far as the Ushabti Bone. And that's it. So now here's what the robes look completely painted. So here's the back, and as you can see, it's very dark recesses, except for the one that's on the far right because it's not as deep, so it is actually a lighter recess. And here's what it looks like on the front. Both of them look pretty clean. They both easily show the flowing patterns of the robes, and they were done with pretty short amounts of time. Obviously, the first technique took longer because you had to wait for the wash to dry, but that's it. So thank you so much for watching this episode of Miniature Painting 101, and stay tuned for next week's episode, part 35, which is just around the corner. But if you can't wait for next week's episode, check out The Warp. Click on the link below for a free 14-day trial to my premium YouTube channel, where not only will you get to see the next 6 months worth of Miniature Painting 101 episodes, you'll also get to see start to finish painting tutorials, more battle reports, and just some awesome wargaming content. So go ahead and check out The Warp if you want. So thank you so much for watching this episode of Miniature Painting 101. Stay tuned for next week's. Until next time, this is Jay saying, happy painting, everyone.